All right, y'all. It's Two Next Day Advice here. I'm going to explain a couple things for you, right? Like, I don't know if I have tism or if I'm just like maybe I'm narcissistic. I don't know. Like there's the thing with the headphones. We already know the mic on these don't work. I can take them off and it works just as well. But I started recording with them, so I kind of like the look. Like that's kind of my thing now. It's kind of weird. Once I get a better setup, I might go with that. Who knows? But I don't know. But here's the thing, right? I was watching a video, had the fat electrician, angry cops, and habitual line crosser in it. And they were talking about nuclear bombs versus nuclear power versus a whole bunch of weird, wacky shit. And I love it. It's a great video, dude. And, God, the fat electrician is so smart, dude. Bro, I would love to sit down with you and, like, pick your brain and just talk about shit and talk about how we can three-color challenge style stuff while I'm opening my medicine. Because that's my thing, right? I can see it, I can understand it, and I can try to break it down three-color challenge style where it's like, dude, you got red, blue, green on a CRT. Yep, you can make all the colors in the rainbow on a TV. But we were taught in school we needed red, blue, yellow. How the hell does that work? Well, in case you didn't know, green is the color you see the most. So we kind of needed that in there. But we can blast it with so much of the other colors, it kind of negates the colors that are in there. And then yellow just sort of pops out. It's fucking weird. But hey, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about nuclear energy versus nuclear bombs. Now, here's the difference, right? Nuclear bombs are really intense. Right off the bat, boom, everything's cooked, smoked, fried, right? And nuclear energy is more like a slow burn. That's the thing. So, if we were to do an experiment where we take water and put it on our stove, it doesn't matter how high you turn that burner up, the water in the pot will only ever be 32 degrees. That's the highest, or I'm sorry, 32 degrees. I was thinking of a freezing temperature. 212 degrees Fahrenheit. A pot of boiling water will only ever be 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius as long as you leave that thermometer inside the water. Now, if you pull it out to the steam, it's going to get hotter. If you put it in the bubbles, it's going to get hotter. That's just the way that works. Yes, I know the headphones ain't working, but I like them. And I like the look. Fucking, it's the way life works. However, even though most ovens won't go down this low, if you could turn your oven to 212 degrees and let that thing preheat to where it's like beep beep, it's preheated to 212 degrees, and you put your hand in there, you're not gonna burn your hand. But if you put it in that water, that shit's done, son. You got no more feeling in that fucking little paw no more. Like it's a wrap. That's how that works. The nuclear bomb is the boiling water. It releases all that energy all at once, and all those little bubbles you see are the bomb going off. But when you open the door and you just kind of feel like a heat wave, and for the most part, it's probably going to end up going away in a couple of minutes. That's how the nuclear power plant works. It depends on how fast that energy is able to dissipate or radiate. Wait, what? Radiate is part of radiation? That's fucking weird how that works, but that's exactly how that works. It's how fast can we get it to radiate. The bomb radiates really fast. The power generation radiates slower so we can get more use out of the fuel. Like, that's literally what it is. I wouldn't shit you, man. You're my favorite turd, right? I promise you, this is the God's honest truth. And we know this. We can take two different chemicals, put them together, wrap it up in a cool little cylindrical item, and we have what's called a battery. Or we can do it with some fluid. Once we snap it and those two chemicals mix, we have a chem light. Two different things combining to release a particular energy, either on a particular wavelength or of a particular, well, it's all about wavelength, but hang on. I swear to God, this ain't a fart. It's a cramp. It's so much cramp. Okay, there we go. I'm better now. I don't think I'm as pink, but I could be, and that's fine. I'm not doing color correction on this shit. That's how that works. Radiation is really just the amount of energy something is releasing, and to some small extent, why it's releasing it. Does that make sense? Sunlight is radiation. The sun is beating us with radiation every day. Sometimes we turn pink, sometimes we turn tan. It's radiation. That's how it works. Radiation is simply something that is radiating a particular amount of energy. Now, what we've learned to do is combine two particular chemicals that will release a particular amount of radiation. Now, if we know what these two chemicals are and how they react with each other, we've learned what chemicals we can combine to release the radiation at the speed that we want it. The faster we get it to radiate, the more damage it can do in a small amount of time. The slower you can get it to radiate, the more damage it will do in a longer period of time. That's why half-life actually really, really matters when you're talking about radiation. Also, Fat Electrician talked a lot about the difference between an air burst and ground burst. We also have to think about how much the ground absorbs the radiation, because it's very, very dense. What we have is conductivity, right? So conductivity, and that's kind of weird. It's kind of, I'm going to see if I can explain that. We're going to get there. But I know what it is. I can picture it, dude, but I got to get it to where you can understand it. But conductivity is how fast things travel through a particular substance, right? So the denser something is, or the more closely packed the atoms are, the more conductivity it has. The lesser dense something is, or the lighter it is, the less conductivity it has. That's why weird shit like gold. Gold is a really good conductor. But gold is a fairly dense metal. It's way better conductor than aluminum, but that's because the molecules, the atoms, all that good stuff, the atoms are what actually share electrons, which is where all that energy comes from, for the most part. They're closer together, so they share the energy really fast, really easy. And aluminum is less dense, they're farther apart, so it takes a little longer for that to happen, so it's slightly less conductive. Does that make sense? That's funny how that works, right? That's really how that works. I wouldn't shit you, man. You're my favorite turd. Anywho's, so the same thing happens with radiation. Because really radiation is just atoms and electrons splitting off and being shared between other atoms and electrons. And they just, sometimes they get confused and don't know who they are anymore. That's really how that works. So what happens when it hits the ground, all that radioactivity gets conducted into the ground. When it happens in the air, which is way less dense, it doesn't have as many places it can go, and it gets dispersed over a wider area. It's the same difference between, if you were to take a balloon, you can blow it up with air, or you can fill it with water, right? The one you fill it with water is going to do more when you let the opening go and just let that water spray out versus what the one with the air is going to do. Okay, so if we're not talking about difference in travel, but what we're talking about is like you were to hold on to it, hold it in one spot and keep it from moving. Oh, hey, here's an experiment. I mean, we're like 9.5 seconds in, so hopefully YouTube's not going to be like, he said this way too early in the video. I don't know how YouTube rules actually work. But, if anybody ever leaves a turd in the toilet, that's a man's signification, or a man's cue, she left it there, she wants me to cut this fucking thing up. So when I walk in there to take a piss next time, I'm doing my damnedest to cut that turd in half. That's what it is. But I also know pissing it in half is going to do way more than try to blow it in half. which I've never tried. I'll never try. I keep talking a lot of shit about, hey, we're here to learn stuff, and that's what Gen X Dad Vice wants to do. I'm not going to study the difference between trying to piss a turd in half with a water jet or blow it in half with my hot air. So, that being said, that's kind of the difference between how radiation works between things like bombs versus power plants. It's just more energy at a given time versus energy dispersed over time. Because all radiation is energy radiating from something. Typically, the way we figured out to make it work is combining two chemicals that don't particularly like each other, you know. Like the girls we see on YouTube when we're looking for things to flop out in a fight. Okay, love you, bye.